You may recall from last week's episode when I showed you how to plan a Milky Way image using PhotoPills that I mentioned that it's best to photograph the Milky Way when there's no moon in the sky. And that's because the light of the moon can wash out the Milky Way and make it look very faint. And that's true. However, it's not impossible to photograph the Milky Way while the moon is up. And in fact, when done correctly, you can use the moon as a way to illuminate your subject, which can make for an interesting composition. In today's video, I'm going to show you how to plan a moonlit Milky Way image using PhotoPills, so stay tuned. Hey there, photographers. Brenda Petrella here, and welcome to another episode of PhotoPills Friday, where we unlock the power of the PhotoPills app to help you learn it without all the confusion. Our goal for today is to plan an image of a scene with the Milky Way that is slightly lit up by the light of the moon, but not so much so that we wash out the Milky Way. Now, this may be the most advanced plan we've done so far together in this series, but everything that we're going to talk about today, we've touched upon in previous videos. So we're just going to build upon those concepts, especially those that we discussed in last week's video, so check it out if you haven't yet. To get a composition like this, we need to find a night when the moon is ideally less than 50% full. And since the names of the phases of the moon can be a little confusing, let's just quickly review them to make sure we're all on the same page. Here's a short video clip from NASA showing the phases of the moon, starting with the new moon, then waxing crescent, first quarter, waxing gibbous, full moon, waning gibbous, third or last quarter, waning crescent, and then back to the new moon. The designations are a little confusing because what appears to be a half moon is called either the first quarter or last quarter moon, and that's because the term quarter refers to the time in the moon phase cycle rather than how much the moon is illuminated from the Earth's perspective. Waxing basically means growing, and waning basically means shrinking. So these terms are used to indicate whether the moon is on its way to becoming a full moon or on its way to becoming a new moon. A crescent moon is less than half illuminated, whereas a gibbous moon is more than half illuminated. So for the purposes of this image, we are looking for a moon that is in the range of a waxing crescent to first quarter moon or a last quarter to waning crescent moon. And anything in the gibbous range or larger would be too bright for the Milky Way. For the example plan today, I've decided to plan an image of the Milky Way behind Mount Rainier in Washington State, with the moon lighting up Rainier and the surrounding mountains. And if you do a quick Google search for Milky Way and Mount Rainier, you'll get a bunch of image examples, but the one that I found that inspired this plan was by Brad Goldpaint, and I'll link his image in the description below. Now, because the Milky Way Galactic Center is found in the southern sky, if you're in the northern hemisphere, we need to position ourselves somewhere north or northeast of Rainier to get the perspective we want. And there are tons of trails and viewpoints located all around Mount Rainier National Park, and I've already done a bit of research using Google Earth and various trails websites into these different potential shooting locations. And many of them would work, but the one I've chosen for today is a view from Burroughs Mountain, which is a hike that's accessible from the Sunrise Visitor Center. Okay, now let's jump into the planner. The first thing I'm going to do is get my red pin set at the top of Burroughs Mountain. And since I have it saved as a point of interest, I just need to load it by clicking on Load at the bottom, Point of Interest, Burroughs Mountain, and now my red pin is plopped on the top of Burroughs Mountain. Next, I'm going to go into the map settings and turn on the Moon map layer and the Milky Way map layer, and make sure that my other map layers are turned off because we don't need them right now. Now, you may notice that it's a bit difficult to see the map layers on the map for this location, and that's because the background is quite busy in the satellite view. But I want to keep the satellite view because it's easier to identify the mountains. And so what I'm going to do is go to the fifth panel of the top bar, which is the Twilights panel, and click it on by tapping the icon. And what this does is it basically adds a cover overlay to the map depending on the time of the day. And as you can see, at night, the map appears more shaded, and that makes the overlays a little bit easier to see. And so that's just a little side tip. Okay, so if I zoom in on the map, you can see here the top of Rainier, which is a volcano, and there's the summit crater right there in the center. And just to the east of Rainier is another peak called Little Tahoma Peak, which you can also see right here in this image. And I'd like to plan a moonlit shot where the Milky Way is anywhere between Little Tahoma and Rainier. So the two questions we need to ask ourselves are, one, which month or months will the Milky Way be where we want it to be for our composition? And two, during those months, will there be a moon at the right illumination and azimuth to light up the subject the way we want? So to answer these questions takes a little trial and error, and there may be more than one way to solve this problem, but I'm just going to show you how I would approach it. Because Rainier is much higher in elevation than Little Tahoma, it's possible that the Milky Way galactic core will be blocked by the mountain depending on the time of the Milky Way season. So to account for that, I'm going to scroll to the second panel of the top bar and turn on the pin-to-pin geodetic info panel, and I'm going to place the black pin at the summit of Rainier. My timeline is currently set for today's date, which at the time of this recording is September 24th. And as I scroll through the night, you can see that that thick white line that indicates the azimuth of the galactic core turns dashed as I approach Mount Rainier. And so that tells us that the core will be blocked by the mountain on this date, and that's just something we'll need to keep an eye on as we look for potential dates for our composition. Also, as I mentioned in episode 20, the Milky Way season runs from March to October in the Northern Hemisphere. So let's set our timeline to March 1st of 2021 to search next year's season by just tapping on the timeline and entering the date. Also recall from episode 20 that the light gray line represents the azimuth of the Milky Way galactic core when it becomes visible in the sky, and the dark gray line represents the azimuth of the core when it is no longer visible. So to get the image we want, where the Milky Way is somewhere between Little Tahoma and Rainier, then we want to try to find a date where the gray lines are bookending that area between Little Tahoma and Rainier. Also note the light blue and dark blue lines, which represent the azimuths of the moonrise and moonset, respectively. We are going to watch these lines as well as we advance through the timeline. So if my perspective on the mountain is in this direction, then ideally I would like to find a moon where the moonlight will be coming over my left shoulder or over my right shoulder to get the light on the mountain the way I would like. So let's fast forward to timeline to quickly see which months are contenders for our shot. An easy shortcut for this is to scroll the top bar to the 8th panel and tap on the Milky Way icon, which advances the timeline to the next new moon. Now, we obviously don't want to actually shoot during the new moon for a moonlit image, but we're just going to use this as a way to quickly advance the timeline as we observe how the gray and blue lines move over the course of the Milky Way season. So I'm just going to tap the Milky Way icon to advance to the new moons and look at how the gray and blue lines are shifting around the map as we go forward in time. And it looks like our first option is July because the light gray and dark gray lines are bookending the two mountain peaks as we discussed. So the Milky Way will be in the right direction for our shot this month. And the light and dark blue lines are also generally where I would want, with the azimuths of the moonrise and moonset being somewhere behind my shooting location at the red pin. So as I continue to tap the Milky Way icon and go to the next new moon for the next month, it looks like August and September are also potential times for the Milky Way to be in the correct position for this shot. So now we've narrowed down our options to July, August, and September. So next, we need to see if there is a moon at the right phase in azimuth during these months. So one way to do this is to use the moon pill inside of PhotoPills. So click on the back button at the top to go back to all of the tools and click on the moon pill. It shows the moon information for your current location's date and time, not necessarily the red pins. So to set the information to follow the red pin's location, click on Settings and then Position, and in Position, type in Burroughs Mountain. Next, we're going to click the calendar at the bottom and then scroll to July of 2021. Here we see a graphical representation of the moon for the whole month, and we can see that during the first week of July, the moon will be in the last quarter to waning crescent phase, and then it will be in the waxing crescent to first quarter phase during around July 12th to the 17th, and then it will be back to the last quarter at the end of the month. So those are the potential windows of opportunity for this shot in July. So now let's just test them out. So I'm going to pick a date in the middle of the first week of July to start with. So let's start with July 4th, when the moon will be a waning crescent. Now, if I click on the moon on the calendar here, it loads July 4th now into the info panel of the moon pill. Here at the top just lists the date and our location, and the phase percent of the moon, which as a waning crescent is 27.7%. It also indicates moonrise, which is at 1:57 a.m., and moon set, which will be at 4:21 p.m. And below that information is sort of a graphical list of information, such as when the galactic center will become visible, which on this date at this location will be at 2:30 a.m. So on July 4th, 2021, the moon will be up for about a half an hour before we lose visibility of the galactic core. Now, because Rainier is so tall, it's possible that this time frame would be even shorter depending on the azimuth of the Milky Way on this date, and we'll look at that again in a moment. Now, if we wanted to quickly glance at the other days surrounding July 4th during this week, we can just tap on the forward or backward arrows at the top here, and we can see whether the difference in time between moonrise and when the galactic core rises increases or decreases. And we can see that if we go forward in time, it looks like the time frame decreases, and if we go backward in time, it looks like the time frame increases, but the moon also gets bigger. So there are various trade-offs that you need to consider when doing a plan like this, and there's no real right answer. You just have to decide what's best for your image. So at this point, you could do the same type of analysis for the other dates in July that we identified, and then you can repeat it for August and September as well if you didn't find a date that works in July. But for now, let's just see how July 4th looks in the planner to see if we needed to continue to tweak the date or not. So to easily load this date into Planner, just click on Action at the bottom and then Send to Planner. The first thing I'm going to do is check where the Milky Way will be when the moon starts to rise. So since I know that moonrise is at 1:57 a.m. on this date, I'm just going to enter that into the timeline. And now I'm just going to slowly scroll the timeline forward to see how the azimuth of the Milky Way galactic core changes. So I'm tapping and holding on the timeline to basically stretch it out and elongate it, and that makes it easier to more accurately scroll through the timeline. And it looks like the Milky Way will be between Little Tahoma and Mount Rainier in a fairly vertical position right around 2 a.m. And the moon, as shown by the light blue line, will be at a good azimuth at this time because it'll be coming from basically over my left shoulder at the red pin's location. But the thing that I'm concerned about is that it will be just rising at this time, and so it's not going to be very high in the sky yet. And even though Rainier is at like 14,000 feet or so, we may get better light on the other mountain peaks if the moon is a little higher in the sky. So we can check the elevation of the moon at this time by scrolling to the third panel of the top bar. And the elevation of the moon at this time is 0.3 degrees. So this is quite close to the horizon, and it probably won't be very bright. So let's continue to scroll the timeline until we get to around 2:30 a.m. And now we can see that the elevation of the moon is approaching 5 degrees, which is a little bit better. So if you have the twilight overlay on, then you'll see this sort of purplish tint starting to enter into the map around 2:30, and this is the start of astronomical twilight. And so that may also adversely affect how well you can photograph the Milky Way. So that's another thing to keep in mind. So the window of opportunity for this composition is quite small on this date. And from here, what I would do next is just go back into the calendar for the moon pill, repeat those same steps until I found a date that worked best using the same analysis we just did for this date. So we're trying to find that sweet spot of a combination of when the moon rises, the elevation and azimuth of the moon, and the azimuth of the Milky Way core before it sets behind Rainier or is no longer visible in the sky. And so in the interest of time, I'm not going to repeat the whole process here, but I did already do the legwork and found that the best date is going to be July 31st, 2021, during the last quarter phase of the moon. And if you would like to check your work against mine, I've included a link to the final plan in the description below if you want to download it. And I show you how to import a shared plan into PhotoPills in episode 15 if you're unsure how to do that. Now, I just want to give you the heads up that today is the last video of season 2 of PhotoPills Friday, and it's been an amazing 6 months or so of weekly videos all about learning the PhotoPills photography app. And so thank you for sticking with me, and congratulations on making it this far. You've now added a valuable tool to your photography toolbox that you can use to plan all kinds of creative images. So have fun with it. Now, for your convenience, I've put the entire library of PhotoPills Friday videos up on the Outdoor Photography School website. So if you ever want to go back and rewatch them, you can easily refer to them there. They're all in one place. Going forward, I will be shifting my focus back to my normal landscape photography tutorials and creating more articles on the Outdoor Photography School website. So be sure to check those out if you want to continue learning with me. Subscribe if you haven't already, and then go get some fresh air, and I'll see you next time. Thanks.